Every child in Europe grows up with this story. It's a fable that's travelled from India to Persia to Spain to Denmark. Hans Christian Andersen published his version in 1837, but Andersen didn't invent this story, he reworked it. In 13th century Spain, it appears in a collection called Libro de los Ejemplos by Don Juan Manuel, but he himself did not invent it. The story had come from an Arabic work first, which is called Kalila wa Dimla, but it actually goes back further, all the way back to 300 BC. The original was written in Sanskrit. It was one of the folktales compiled in the Panchatantra. These stories that started in Sanskrit language moved into Persia, and then into Arabia, and then into Iberia, and then finally into Denmark. These stories are teaching tools. They might seem lighthearted and simple, but they hide serious lessons inside. Stories like this survive and spread over millennia because they explain power in ways that anybody, even a child, can understand. A naked emperor is easier to remember than a lecture on propaganda. But this is a lesson in propaganda. Once upon a time, there was an emperor who was obsessed with clothes. He did not care about his army. He did not care about his government. He did not care about his people. Just outfits. He had a new suit for every hour of the day. And if somebody asked, "Where's the emperor?" the answer was always, "He's in his dressing room." One day, two strangers arrive in town calling themselves weavers. And they tell everyone that they have discovered a special cloth. It's dazzlingly beautiful, light as air, and with one extraordinary quality. Anybody who is stupid or unworthy or unfit for their job simply won't be able to see it. The emperor's ears prick up. Vanity and paranoia work together. If I wear these clothes, he thought, I will not only look magnificent, but I can secretly test which of my officials are fools, because anyone who cannot see the fabric exposes themselves. So he hands over gold on the spot and tells the men to start weaving. They set up looms and pretend to weave. Day after day, they work with empty tools. The emperor sends officials in to check, but any official that walks into the room and sees nothing panics. They think to themselves, if I can't see the cloth, they'll say I'm unfit for office. So everyone praises the fabric. Magnificent, such colours, incredible pattern. Word spreads and soon the whole city is buzzing about these marvellous new clothes. Finally, the day came for the grand reveal. The con men pretend to cut the fabric and sew it and hold it up. They pretend to dress the emperor in his new clothes. They fuss and they pat and they whisper, "See how light it is?" And the emperor steps out naked. The courtiers gasp in admiration, being careful not to be the one that breaks the spell. The crowds line up in the street and cheer. Not one person dared to admit what their eyes told them, that their ruler was parading starkers in public. And then, somewhere in the crowd, a child blurts out, "But he's not wearing anything." These words ripple through the crowd, and everybody starts whispering, then laughing, then shouting, "The emperor has no clothes on." The emperor hears this. He realizes that it's true, but the parade must go on. So he lifts his chin, straightens his back, and keeps walking, even prouder than before, completely naked, in front of everyone. This story is a political parable about empire. It's a lesson on propaganda. The con men say that the clothes are invisible to anyone who is unfit for office or stupid. That makes all the ministers afraid. When they go to see the cloth, they see nothing, but they all think that if they say it, they will lose their job, and so they all lie. Even the emperor sees nothing, but because he believes that other people can see it, he repeats the lie to protect himself. At the end of the story, he is walking in a parade completely naked, and the whole crowd is cheering and pretending to admire his clothes, even though nobody can see them. They've internalized it. It must be my fault I can't see the clothes. When the child shouts out, "But he's not wearing anything," that shatters the illusion. People nearby agree, and soon everybody's saying it. The emperor realizes this, and he feels embarrassed, but he will not admit defeat. He thinks the procession must go on, so he lifts his head and keeps walking, while his attendants pretend to hold up the train of robe that does not exist. That ending is important. Even though the lie was exposed, the system carries on. The emperor does not stop the parade. Everyone knows the truth, yet the show carries on. The story is simple enough for children, yet it maps perfectly onto systems of power. It shows you how power is dependent on complicity and silence. And it shows you how fragile that silence is. One small voice can puncture it. The child is the symbol of innocence, free from indoctrination, capable of speaking truth to power. The tale is a model of how legitimacy collapses. The lie holds until it's named. Once named, everyone remembers what they already knew. It just took one person to pierce that silence. The emperor symbolizes the ruler's ego and the fragility of legitimacy. The weavers are corrupt advisors, con men, yes men, flatterers. The courtiers are all too scared to break rank, and so the public gets pressured into conformity. In Islamic political thought, these tales often serve to warn rulers not to be blinded by their vanity or sycophants. The point of the fable is consent, not consent as a choice, but as a performance. So long as everybody sees, but no one speaks, the system will uphold itself. But as soon as you start naming the obvious, it fails. Power relies on your consent. Manufacture the garments, manufacture the nods, manufacture the silence. Break the silence, and everything unravels.